General Hospital will reveal after years of being buried, the truth has finally erupted like a storm, tearing through every false facade in Port Charles. The revelation that Giovanni is the biological son of Brooke Lynn and Dante has now been confirmed, immediately becoming the catalyst that ignites every fragile relationship among the town's most powerful families. No longer rumors or suspicions. Joe's true identity cuts through long-held secrets like a blade and sets the stage for a series of confrontations rooted in fractured loyalties, wounded pride, and agonizing decisions. In the moment this truth comes to light, every character connected to it is pulled into an emotional whirlwind with no clear way out. The Quartermaines, the Corinthos clan, and the Falconaries, three families that have long clashed over legacy, loyalty, and love, must now face a reality that changes everything. Motherhood is tested, fatherhood is questioned. And long-buried wounds are exposed under the harsh scrutiny of a town that never forgets. At the center of it all is Gio, a young man who once believed he was just an ordinary musician, now transformed into a symbol of unraveling truths, fragile hope, and a future yet to be defined amid the wreckage of long-standing deceptions. Joe's world has been turned upside down since the stunning revelation of his true parentage. For most of his life, he lived under the assumption that he was simply the adopted son of a distant, well-meaning family, never suspecting that his biological roots were so deeply entangled in the powerful and complex families of Port Charles. Now, as the truth settles in, Gio finds himself at an emotional crossroads. Despite being raised with care, the knowledge that Brooke Lynn, his own mother, made the decision to give him away leaves a sting that is difficult to ignore. Although she may have been manipulated or pressured by her mother Lois, the fact remains that Brooke Lynn agreed to the adoption. For Gio, that decision feels like abandonment, regardless of the intentions behind it. Brooke Lynn's pain is undeniable. Her choice, made under emotional duress and a lack of life experience, was one she believed was best at the time. She never had the opportunity to bond with her son, to see him grow, to comfort him in times of need, or to celebrate his accomplishments. But now, faced with a young man who looks at her not with affection but confusion and resentment, she is grappling with the immense weight of maternal guilt. The fact that she didn't even know Gio was her son until recently does little to absolve her in his eyes. To him, she is the one who let go. And that truth is haunting both of them in different ways. In contrast, Gio has begun to form an unexpected bond with Dante. Though their relationship was strained in the beginning, especially once emotions started swirling around the possibility of shared DNA, Dante's steady, calm demeanor has been quietly chipping away at Joe's defenses. Dante never knew he had a son. He never had a choice in whether to raise him, protect him, or even meet him. That absence, though not his fault, left a void Gio is just beginning to acknowledge. Perhaps it's because Dante approaches him without pressure, without expectations, just a quiet hope of connection, that Gio has started leaning toward his father, while simultaneously distancing himself from Brooke Lynn. This quiet shift in allegiance has not gone unnoticed. Brooke Lynn, already fragile under the weight of her own regrets, sees her son seeking comfort in Dante and feels a deep, cutting ache. Every shared glance, every word exchanged between father and son is a reminder of what she lost, what she gave up, and what she cannot get back. No matter how deeply she longs to rebuild something with Gio, he seems more inclined to build it with Dante first. She stands on the outside looking in, unsure whether she'll ever be allowed back into her son's heart, or if the window of opportunity has already closed before it even opened. Meanwhile, Gio is conflicted. Part of him longs to reject both of them, to remain loyal only to himself, to the music that has always been his refuge, and to the identity he carefully constructed over the years. But another part, one he doesn't fully understand yet, is curious. Curious about the man who shares his blood but never had the chance to share his life. Curious about the mother who cries in silence but never once held him through a sleepless night. This war between curiosity and resentment is tearing at him, even as he tries to appear composed. Dante, ever patient, continues to show up, not with grand gestures, but with consistency. He makes it clear to Gio that he's not trying to replace the life the boy has lived, but simply hoping to be a part of it now. He tells stories about his own childhood, about the mistakes he's made, about the family dynamics that shaped him into the man he is. He listens more than he talks. He allows Gio space. And that, more than anything, begins to earn Joe's trust. He sees in Dante a man who never stopped searching for meaning, even when he didn't know what he was missing. A man who, had he known, would have been there in a heartbeat. As days pass and moments accumulate, Gio begins to inch toward reconciliation, not with words, but with presence. He accepts a ride from Dante. He agrees to dinner, even if it's quiet. He listens. And though he's still hesitant with Brooke Lynn, still burdened by the knowledge of her past decision, there's a flicker of understanding beginning to spark. Perhaps, in time, forgiveness might follow. But for now, it is Dante who holds the fragile thread of connection with his son, while Brooke Lynn stands in the wings, hopeful, remorseful, and waiting for the day Gio will find room for her in the story of who he is becoming. 4 weeks. The air between Gio and Emma has been electric with possibility, an unspoken tension weaving through every glance, every casual touch, every shared silence. Both young, both gifted in their own ways, and both carrying the weight of their legacies on their shoulders, Gio and Emma found each other at a time when neither truly understood what they needed. Yet both instinctively recognized it in the other. Though their connection began with friendship, anchored in trust and mutual admiration, there was always something lingering just beneath the surface. But fear, uncertainty, and the chaos of their lives made them hesitant to cross that invisible line between friendship and something more. Gio, newly rocked by the revelation of his parentage, found himself overwhelmed by identity crises, emotional betrayal, and an avalanche of sudden attention. It was Emma, level-headed and quietly strong, who never flinched in the face of his unraveling. She didn't bombard him with questions or force reassurances. She simply stood by him, present, calm, and patient. In a world suddenly filled with noise and confusion, she became his silence, his steady rhythm amid emotional dissonance. And when Gio took to the stage at the nurses' ball, exposing his soul through music, it was Emma who was first to rush to his side, eyes glistening with pride and affection. That moment on stage was a turning point, not just for Gio, but for the relationship quietly blossoming between him and Emma. She saw him not as the lost son of 2 legacy families, not as the subject of town gossip or scandal, but as the boy who poured his soul into melodies and still looked like he might shatter under the weight of it all. And Gio, for the first time in days, felt seen, truly seen, not for what had been revealed about him, but for who he was underneath all the noise. That night wasn't just about music. It was about the spark that finally ignited into something neither of them could ignore any longer. In the days that followed, they found themselves drawn to each other in ways that felt different, gentler, more intentional. There was no grand confession, no dramatic overture. Instead, there were long walks through the park without saying much, fingers brushing together before finally interlocking. The shared sound of laughter echoing as a temporary escape from the chaos of their families. Emma, who had seen heartbreak before and understood how fragile people could become in its wake, approached Gio with care. She didn't rush him. She gave him space to speak when he wanted to, and silence when he didn't. But through it all, she remained by his side, a quiet reminder that he wasn't alone. Gio, who once thought music was the only way he could express the mess inside him, found his heart slowly translating that emotion into affection for Emma. Her presence became more than comfort, it became clarity. She wasn't just the girl who understood him. She was the girl who stayed. Through the storm of family revelations, through the emotional minefield of discovering he'd been lied to his entire life, Emma never wavered. Her loyalty, soft yet unwavering, became a lighthouse guiding him through emotional fog. And as he looked at her one evening, her hair catching the light, her smile tinged with worry for him, he leaned in and kissed her, not out of impulse, but out of the quiet certainty that she was already a part of his heart. The kiss, tender and hesitant at first, deepened with the mutual recognition that this wasn't the beginning of something, it was the confirmation of what had already begun. What followed wasn't wild passion, but rather a quiet intimacy. Hands lingering a little longer, embraces lasting a bit more than necessary, conversations that dipped into vulnerability more than ever before. Gio opened up in fragments, about his anger, his guilt, his confusion, and Emma listened without judgment. She, in turn, shared her fears about living up to her parents' legacy, about being more than just the Scorpio Drake girl, and Gio listened too, holding her hand tighter with every word. Their romance wasn't built on dramatic declarations or sweeping gestures, it was built on the quiet strength of shared experience. Gio didn't need saving, but he needed someone who saw the beauty in his broken parts. Emma didn't need to be adored, but she needed someone who understood the weight of being born into a story already half-written. Together, they carved out something tender, something real, in the midst of all the chaos that Port Charles could throw at them. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. And as Gio continued to wrestle with his place in the world, caught between the legacy of three powerful families, the wounds of abandonment, and the confusion of sudden belonging, Emma became his anchor. Whatever storms lay ahead, whatever confrontations or heartbreaks awaited, he knew that somewhere in the madness, there was a place where he could rest his heart. And that place was Emma. In a town built on secrets, betrayals, and tangled legacies. It's always surprising when the sharpest voice in the room also becomes the most compassionate. And yet, in the case of Joe's rapidly unraveling world, it is Tracy who steps forward not as a judge, not as a Quartermaine matriarch with her usual steel gaze, but as an unexpected voice of reason. For someone who has spent decades mastering the art of cutting through pretense with biting wit and relentless logic, Tracy finds herself doing something she rarely does, offering patience, empathy, and even vulnerability, especially toward a young man who never asked to be caught in the crossfire of family history. Joe's life has spun out of control since learning that the people around him, the ones he thought were simply neighbors, mentors, and friends, are, in truth, his blood. Brooklyn, who had always hovered at the edge of his world as a figure of mystery and elegance, is suddenly his biological mother. Dante, the detective whose moral compass he once admired from afar, is now the father he never knew he had. The truth is too heavy, too raw, and the betrayal too complex to process all at once. So it's no wonder that, after the emotional storm of the nurses' ball, Gio begins to quietly gather his things, determined to leave the Quartermaine estate behind and find a new path, alone. But just as Gio attempts to disappear without confrontation, his suitcase in hand and his eyes focused on the door, Tracy intercepts him, not with a raised voice or scolding tone, but with calm, direct clarity. She sees the pain in his posture, the storm behind his eyes, and she knows that anger is not what he truly feels. It's confusion. It's grief. It's the aching loneliness of someone who feels like a pawn in a game he didn't know he was playing. And rather than push him, Tracy does something rare, she listens. Then, when she speaks, her words are measured, gentle in their firmness, and carry the weight of someone who has lived through her own share of heartbreak and betrayal. She reminds Gio that no one in the house, including herself, knew the truth. That their affection for him, genuine, hard-earned, and untainted, was real long before they knew he was one of them. She tells him that the love he feels now is not fabricated, not retroactive. It's rooted in the person he is, not the blood he shares. Tracy admits that she, too, was drawn to Joe's intelligence, his spirit, his quiet strength, and that none of that was motivated by obligation or familial ties. Her bond with him was authentic, unforced, and deeply personal. And that, she insists, is worth fighting for. She also gently challenges Joe's instinct to run. She doesn't tell him he's wrong for feeling betrayed. On the contrary, she validates his right to feel angry, hurt, and overwhelmed. But she warns him not to let that pain dictate decisions he might later regret. She tells him that sometimes, in a house like the Quartermain mansion, where chaos and dysfunction are part of the wallpaper, the only way to survive is to stay and reshape your space within it. Escaping might offer temporary peace, but healing requires facing the people who hurt you, especially when they didn't mean to. Knowing that Gio is desperate for independence but still emotionally tethered to the family's complexity, Tracy offers a compromise. The estate is vast, filled with guesthouses, garden cottages, and renovated service quarters. Perhaps Gio doesn't need to sleep under the same roof as Brooke Lynn and Dante, but maybe he doesn't need to leave the grounds entirely either. Living in the gatehouse or one of the outer buildings would give him privacy, peace, and autonomy, while still maintaining a thread of connection to those who care for him. It's not exile. It's a controlled distance, something that might allow him to heal on his own terms without burning bridges. Gio listens, visibly torn. Tracy sees the internal war he's fighting, the desire to assert control versus the fear of emotional vulnerability. But she doesn't push him to choose in that moment. Instead, she simply says what no one else has dared to say, that he matters. That he belongs. That his presence in the family isn't a mistake or a burden, it's a blessing. And she tells him that while truth has shattered the illusion of the past, it has also given them a chance to build something new, something real, if only he'll let them. As the conversation ends, Gio doesn't move immediately. The suitcase remains by the door. Emma, quietly waiting just outside the hallway, says nothing as Tracy leaves them alone. And Gio stands there, holding the silence like a fragile gift. His mind races with questions, doubts, hopes. But for the first time in days, there's a sliver of clarity piercing through the fog, a voice of reason that didn't come to control him, but to empower him. A voice that, in all its brutal honesty, offered him a choice. Not a command. Tracy, back in the drawing room, pours herself a drink with a sigh. She knows the battle is far from over, but if Gio chooses to stay, even at arm's length, then maybe, just maybe, there's hope yet. Not just for him, but for the family as a whole. Because sometimes, the most powerful redemption doesn't come from apologies or grand gestures, but from one person reminding another that they're not alone. And on that day, in the crumbling foundation of the Quartermain household, it was Tracy who rebuilt the first brick.